again to another bi-weekly troll through science, engineering and technology. It's episode number 57 of the Wondrous Stuff Vodcast, broadcast live on Google Hangouts on air every other weekend. It's the place where you'll find news, information and commentary on science, engineering and technology, like I said before. As ever, my name's John Gardner and I've got colleagues here, as always, Richard Smith and Ross Davidson. Say hello, chaps.
Hello, chaps.
Right, from the experiment that we had 2 weeks ago, where we took a single topic and went off and just talked for 45 minutes, we're going to do another one of those this week, because although we never actually got round to answering the question that we started with...
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Carry on.
We did cover some interesting topics. So this week we are going to do, we don't start with anyway, and talk around the subject of drugs. That'll be the medicinal drug, and I think we're going to start on Richard.
Can do. Okay. So
Got him.
We talked about on a previous show we talked about are Britons taking too many prescription drugs, but we could just widen that up to say, are we too reliant on prescribed drugs generally?
Yeah, I mean, we know. I think we talked about the last time. We talked about the fact that the medical practitioners, doctors, etc., there's been pressure put on them by the patients that they're having consultations with to prescribe even antibiotics and the like, and equally they're being pressured by the medical authorities to not prescribe antibiotics for random stuff. So I guess it's things like that, isn't it? Really.
Well, yeah, and also to me that it takes the sort of the use of having the doctor out of it. If you say, well, under these circumstances you do this, and under these you do this, because your dad's recently gone in and had a chest infection, and they basically wouldn't give him the antibiotics because it hadn't gone on long enough. Now, that just seems like it's gone from like one extreme to the other. Surely the doctors should just be using their discretion more and, give them out less, but via their discretion rather than saying, well, this is a hard and fast rule. It just seems silly.
I mean, obviously we're not privy to what sort of guidelines they've got in terms, because they'll obviously get guidelines issued quite regularly about, cut back on this. This is our new preferred method. Both from the local health authority, one would presume, and also from central government, the chief medical officer and stuff like that. So I guess that's part of it.
Well, we do know they've been told to cut back. So however they're mandating it, there has been at a very high level a decision, right, cut back. So you're going to see some people who do need antibiotics not getting them as a result of that. But it's another one of those things where you let it get the solution would have been not to let it get that bad in the first place, rather than letting it get so bad that then you need this carte blanche sort of piece of advice to go out, and now you're going to get people who genuinely need antibiotics not getting them. It's daft.
It's one of those difficult things as well, because I bet there's a lot of pressure on GPs and stuff to give something, because a lot of people are going, unless they get given a prescription for something, it doesn't really matter what it is, they won't feel like they've been treated. So I bet there's a lot of pressure on them to give stuff out, because people who even perhaps don't need something will feel like they haven't got anywhere.
I think you're right, and I think that quite a big part of the GP's job is as a listener.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that some of these people who've come to them, might not actually be anything wrong with them, or so there might be something very minimal wrong with them, but they're just looking.
Or something wrong with them where there's no treatment available as well. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Doctor doesn't really want to say, well, we don't know anything about this, so tough.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think I would have probably mentioned it when we previously talked about this. My wife used to suffer quite badly from migraines, and I remember getting frustrated at the fact that every time she went to the doctor, she would get something completely different, and not just like a variation of what she was taking. She would get all sorts of drugs, like things for preventing bedwetting in children's and anti-epilepsy drugs and all this sort of thing. But with that, I think that's one where it's migraines. They don't understand what causes it. They do just end up trying a lot of different things because they don't know.
There's not. I mean, with migraines in particular, there's not one thing that causes it, is it?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. Yeah. I do remember sitting and watching the GP scroll through the list of stuff that he could prescribe, and he was like, "Oh, have you tried this? Yes. Tried this? Yes."
Well, that's fair enough. That's fair
pages.
enough. If it's explorative on a patient level, I guess that's fair enough. But
Yeah.
at least he's looking at the medical history and thinking, right, have we tried this before, rather than just
Yeah. Yeah. The list of things she had tried was very long, though, which was quite worrying.
Well, it's just one of those where there's no effective treatment, so what else can they do, basically?
And has it got any better?
Yeah, I mean, she occasionally has one now, not very often. But the only thing that she has that treats them is she has, I can't remember what the name is, but they're actually injections that basically just shut her down.
Does she take something preventative, though?
No.
So they've just remediated themselves, then?
Yeah, I think it's a lot like stress related.
Well, that's the thing, though. Ultimately, a doctor gives a treatment, and I'm guessing a lot of the time they give antibiotics as a placebo. They know the thing's going to run its course, but they just dare not say that. So most things are like self-limiting, aren't they? So they have a life that they live for, and then they end. So a lot of the time, it's either that, or they just go on forever. And in both cases, there's no effective treatment. All you can do is try and alleviate the symptoms.
Yeah.
And try and placate the patient, basically.
Because things like talk about like preventative stuff, paracetamol and stuff like that. People say it's sort of safe to take all the time. Is that right?
Well, we covered that, didn't we?
Yeah.
I think paracetamol was one of the ones we covered, and it was, every so often that you'll get. Originally, the first one I heard of was that beta blockers was the wonder drug. And then, it was statins. It was like everybody will be taking statins. We'll just prescribe them to everybody over 40. Paracetamol, well, aspirin, we know it has a lot of...
I think aspirin's the one you might be thinking of. That's the one
yeah.
where you can take it all the time.
Yeah.
I think paracetamol's toxic, though, to more or less an extent, isn't it?
If you take paracetamol overdose, you'll have liver damage, won't you?
So can you not overdose on aspirin?
Well, you could obviously, because it thins the blood. You could thin the blood to the. I know for like people who suffer stomach ulcers and things like that, they're advised not to take it at all. Anything where you're going to, if you've got a risk of bleeding internally or otherwise, aspirin's not a great choice. But it's the same as if you had like a natural remedy, which pretty much aspirin is, that to thin the blood. I mean, it's a good thing generally, but this is why you have a prescription and an expert opinion before you prescribe a drug, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's why you shouldn't go around prescribing your own drugs, because even something as basic as aspirin, if you've got an underlying medical condition and you're not aware, or even if you are aware, you're not aware that drug exacerbates it, then that's why you see a medical professional, isn't it?
It's funny, that's one of the things I've got written down here as a subtopic, which is self-medication and the presupposition that more and more people are now self-medicating. Not through legitimate means either. Some legitimate means, but...
I think the thing is as well is it's that because of the placebo effect, there's huge risks around it, because people will think, well, I know what works for me, and you hear that phrase said, like, well, if it works for you, it's like, well, but without a clinical trial, you don't know that it's working for you. You just think that it's working for you, and actually the drug may not have any part to play in it, and you could actually be taking a drug with side effects or like cumulative long-term health effects unnecessarily, and that's why you need to see a medical professional. I think people get well, certainly in the States we covered the story, didn't we, about how now opiates are killing more people than car crashes in the States, and that's seemingly large part down to self-medication.
So it's like we're veering into homeopathy here. That's all placebo, isn't it? Obviously.
That's homeopathy is the taking a tincture, which has the essential ingredient, and then diluting it by 100,000 times, and then hitting it with a horsehair bat.
Something like that.
isn't it? I think.
But there's absolutely no way it could be effective. So but people swear by it. So that must be a placebo.
But it's not too different from a lot of mainstream drugs, though. That I'm sure that people, I'm sure that in some cases they work, but a lot of the time, I'm sure that it's in the head of the beholder, sort of thing.
It's that Dora Breen sketch, isn't it? Yeah. What we did was we analysed everything. Those that worked we called drugs. Those we didn't work homeopathy. I'm paraphrasing. But it's the thing, it's when it, like I've always been intrigued in things like Chinese medicine. Obviously, people swear by it, but there's loads of stuff in there. There's just no scientific proof that any of that works.
Well, that's the thing as well. And if it's been studied, it doesn't work. So there's no need to be softly and say, well, there's no evidence that it. Basically, that means that it doesn't work. If you study something extensively, which all of it has been, and you can't find any evidence that's better than placebo, then it simply does not work. And so you should cease and desist.
And it's not just that I think a lot of people think that it's just natural remedies. Well, salicylic acid, which is the base of aspirin, is from a bark of a tree originally.
Yeah.
And like Dora Breen says, and then he did it in a comedic way, but it's the truth. They took salicylic acid from a bark of a tree and went, yeah, this does work.
Well,
this is medicine.
And if shark fins really did cure cancer or whatever, then we would be looking at the proteins and trying to synthesize them, etc., etc. We'd be looking at the compounds that might be active in that meat that leads to that property. But we're not looking at that because there is no evidence that there is that property. So it's not a conspiracy, and it's not a welfare for the shark thing. It's the fact that there's no evidence that it works. So therefore, there's no line of inquiry to chase it up. And I think if people think that that's like a conspiracy in Big Pharma or the West versus the East, then I think of how much money there would be to be made if you could synthesize something like that.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, it must have been like how long has aspirin been known about?
It's early part of the 20th century, wasn't it? Wasn't it 20s or 30s or something like that?
It's probably been used as a herbal remedy way back, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they probably took the bark. Is it the what tree is it?
Is it the aspen? No.
But what I was going to say was, obviously, at some point they did the scientific investigation and obviously worked out that it was effective. I'm guessing at the same time they were doing that, they were testing all sorts of other things at the same time. So by now we will know pretty much whether all these herbal remedies, which ones work, which ones don't. Yeah. But obviously that doesn't seem to have changed that attitude towards herbal remedies. There's still a lot of people that swear by them.
That is the gag that he does, is that the things that had evidence became medicine, and that's the truth.
Yeah. But it seemed you would have thought they would have sort of stopped taking the ones that didn't do anything.
Yeah, but people aren't looking at the science, are they? It's not a scientifically literate society.
It's interesting here because they're saying that obviously exactly what you've just said. They've known that the willow bark has been useful for reducing fever and inflammation since the Middle Ages, I think. And then it was the mid 18th century when they started doing original tests on it, and aspirin's been actually for sale since the 1800s, which is bizarre. But yeah, interesting. It's beer.
So it's actually it must be one of the oldest pharmaceuticals then, essentially.
Yeah,
it must be. Yeah.
Beer.
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 Oh, Bayer.
Big pharmaceutical company.
Right.
Yeah. Bayer. So interesting. So I guess at one point it must have had yes.
So did Bayer own? Is it trademarked aspirin?
Well, that's what I was trying to say. At one point, it must have had a copyright on it.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, it's got a trademark, I think. But yeah.
Well, aspirin isn't, but Anodin is. But aspirin's not a trademark.
Well, it is a trademark in some countries, though, isn't it? You've got to call it ASA or something like that if it's. You've got to call it its chemical name if it's a company
Right.
where you've got it trademarked, which obviously is not the case here. But
Hold on. Aspirin with a capital A remains a registered trademark of Bayer in over 80 countries.
There you go. Interesting. But the thing is, and it says, I mean, it says here in the wonderful world of Wikipedia, aspirin's probably declined after the development of what came to be paracetamol and ibuprofen. But it might have declined to that. But now, we know that if anybody is having a heart attack, the first thing that the paramedic will give them is probably some aspirin, crushed up aspirin or soluble aspirin, because we know what, like you were saying before, it's blood thinning properties.
yeah,
Which is exactly what you want if you've got clot or anything like that.
yeah.
Yes, and that's that's one of the great things about having a good medicine that we've had around for so long. There's been a wealth of research on it.
Well, it's a good one as well. That if you don't quite want to take a paracetamol, but you're a bit, you know what I mean. If you're a bit like sort of, I don't really want to take a drug here unnecessarily, you could. Aspirin is.
I do too. That's exactly what I do. I very rarely, even if I've got a headache, I'll take an aspirin.
Yeah.
If I've got a really bad headache, I might take a paracetamol. But more often than not, I'll take an aspirin. And I'll take an aspirin if I'm going on a flight. I'll take an aspirin a couple of days before and a couple of days after to prevent DVTs.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the health advice now is to take one every day, isn't it? Pretty much.
Yeah, well, my dad does. My dad takes a soluble aspirin every day as part of his medication.
I never take aspirin or paracetamol.
What do you take when you've got a headache?
Drink water and tea.
Okay. It's not immediate though. I have to say that the drinking water thing, you might still have your headache for another hour and a bit.
Presumably, if that's the cause of your headache, you just haven't drank enough water in the first instance, then.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not some. I don't know. I mean, we have 2 drawers at least full of all sorts of drugs for Nicola, but I never really take any.
Lucky you! I'd love to try and stop some of my headaches with drinking water.
I occasionally take like Beechams and stuff if I'm a bit sniffly, but that's about it.
See, I don't take that because I don't think there's any genuine point in it. If it over the counter medication for colds and flu. I don't think it does anything. Genuinely don't.
It probably doesn't, but I think it's just a hot and fruity drink. I think that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I normally have warm Ribena with lemon juice.
Warm Ribena would probably do just as good.
Yeah.
Mm.
I feel better.
Though, sometimes I've actually got codeine on prescription for my migraines because it works. So that's kind of like going like 3 levels up straight off the bat. But because it's effective, to me, it stops me then taking. Rotating paracetamol, ibuprofen, and aspirin all day to try and keep the migraine away, or basically while I've got it. Whereas if I take that, it just kills the migraine, like it never gets to a migraine. So it's useful, but then you find yourself taking codeine quite regularly, which it's probably not a great drug to be doing that with. It does work.
So going back to the original question then that we were ruminating over about the reliance of drugs in this world. Why do you think we've got to this stage? Why do you think that in the start of the end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century, loads of the population was like, ooh, witch doctors and all these medication, and now it's like, yeah, just give us some stuff. How have we come to just sit there and soak up all of this medication and just want more of it?
Well, like I said before, I think a lot of it will be to do with people will, whatever they're suffering from, whatever it is, unless they're given some sort of drug, they'll not feel like they're getting treated. People won't sort of like. I think people will have the idea that everything can be treated with a pill, which is obviously wrong. So I think people turn to drugs quite freely, if that makes sense.
It does. It does, and actually you have just done a grand segue into one of the subtopics which we've got, which is, do we think that people now are relying on drugs so much that they're not taking care of themselves? Do we think that they're not exercising because they think that somewhere down the line they'll be like, well, you'll just take a pill and the heart problems will disappear, or cancer will just disappear, or whatever they've got, whatever their unhealthy lifestyle has brought on. Do we think that it's going that way? Do you think it's already there in some cases?
I think everyone would hope it was going that way. Because
but I mean, some of the stuff that you can prevent by
just doing a bit of exercise,
well, exercising, reasonable amounts of stuff that we used to do because nobody had cars and we used to go, we had to walk to work and back.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, the everything else has got better. Our lifestyles have got. At one point, they got to a good stage, and now there's so much stuff around that we can just consume and process foods and stuff like this to get into the state that we
you saw that on the graph of the life expectancy of the United States, didn't you? That it went up like that, and then it actually went back down again because of the availability of fast food and stuff.
Well, listen, it is the sort of fast food mentality, isn't it? It's if there's a quick and easy way to get something that doesn't involve putting in lots of effort, the majority of people will do that. So whether it's food or a pill that will, I don't know, give you muscles. If you think of people taking like steroids and stuff, shortcut to being muscly, people will do it.
Well, it's not quite the case with steroids because there's a lot of myth around it, so that you wouldn't take steroids and get muscles.
Oh no, but it means you don't have to train as much to get as muscly. You can just sit in your couch and get muscly.
I don't think anyone taking steroids actually uses it in that way, though. I think that's like a public perception of it. I think what they do is they do more training than people who don't take steroids, and then they take steroids to go even a level higher. I don't think as many people use it as a way to do less exercise. But I could be wrong. But
yeah,
the people that I know who are big into the gym, the people who take steroids, are the kind of people who are already at a high level and just want to take it that one level further. But yeah, I think generally that the perception around what you're saying, John, I don't know if it's necessarily drugs, but if you know there's a possible remediation in the pipeline, yet then it does have a cooling effect on your own sort of efforts to curb it, doesn't it? If you think, well, ultimately something's going to happen that's going to help us with this later on, then yes, it does make it worse, doesn't it?
And we actually I'll stop you mid thing. We've got a live viewer who's on at the moment. I'm just trying to ask them if they've got any questions. I don't know who it is.
Quick, get them framed.
So if you're watching live, and there is somebody watching live because I can see it here, just type in the little chat room. We'll have at the bottom of the screen. We'll see it up here if you've got any questions. But yeah, I'm as well going back to the point that you were on there. Do we think that I think that there's some hypocrisy going around as well, because the people who are now I don't say dependent, but dependent not in the dependent way, but depending on drugs. These are the hypocrites who look down at the junkies and the people who have got dependent on drugs, whilst they're still popping their pills. It's interesting, that one.
Do you know the cost of diabetes, type 2 diabetes to the NHS, what the cost is now? Did you see this in the press recently?
No.
So type 2 diabetes is obviously the one you get as a result of lifestyle largely, almost fully. So it's one that you're not getting because of a genetic component, although you may be slightly more predisposed through a genetic component.
My wife has got type 2 diabetes.
So it's the one that's a product of the modern age, basically, isn't it? It didn't really exist before fast food and all.
Although but it's interesting that it's interesting. I think Andrea was talking about this. They're doing some research at Newcastle University, and I know they have a diet which is proven to actually stop type 2 diabetes in its tracks and reverse.
They're looking into it. I don't know if it's proven. They're trialing it. She was saying.
Well, here's the thing. So my father-in-law had type 2 I say had. Here's an interesting thing. My father-in-law had type 2 diabetes, and unfortunately he developed cancer of the bladder and had to get his bladder removed. Now, the operation was a success, but with complications, he actually ended up having to go in for dialysis because the blood, the poisons weren't coming from the blood, and he lost a lot of weight. I mean, lots of weight. His basically clothes were hanging off him, and after he pulled through and was back at home, the next visit to his GP, they actually said that you don't have diabetes anymore.
Yeah, that's what Andrew was on about. That you can backtrack it through choices, basically, which.
And that was over, like, was that a year and a half ago, and he still doesn't have diabetes.
Right.
So
it's interesting.
Type 2 diabetes, what is that again? Is that overproduction of insulin or underproduction of insulin? What is it? It's to do, like, what's the effect?
It's when your insulin response just basically doesn't keep in time with your metabolism. Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems sort of conceivable that it's something that could get kick-started again by, or kick itself into action again to, it's not something you like trying to think of it. It's not something you lose physically. It's just your body not coping with something. So if things change, your body could start regulating itself again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the sort of the boundary. I've got or the last time that I had a blood check, I was impaired glucose intolerance, which is the phase before type 2 diabetes. So I have to do some more exercise. Seriously.
But yes, the cost of it is now more than police, fire service, justice system, and prison service combined. Type 2 diabetes.
That's just for one disease.
Now costs the taxpayer more. Yeah, one preventable disease.
What was the outcome with that proposed thing of doing the they called it the sugar tax? Or they were going to do something to try and reduce sugar, but I think they were trying to do it by making things more expensive, which isn't necessarily the right way of doing it. Yeah, but there was a big thing last year about them trying to reduce sugar.
Jimmy Oliver's restaurants do that now. If you go into any of the Jamie's Italian, there is a soft drinks with sugar in are more expensive by I don't know how much. It was about 10-20 pence or something. But I if you go into Jimmy's Italian, I can't see how that's going to make a great deal of difference, because you're not going to notice. What I'm saying is, it's not the cheapest place, and you're not going to.
Sugar's not really the problem. Refined carbohydrates is the problem.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. Anyway, so are we getting any further with the topic?
We're getting there.
I mean, just to bring up another topic, I think obviously when we touched on this before, I think it was one of my subjects, and I was talking just from experience, not from any sort of scientific facts or anything, but it was just the fact that out of my particular group of friends, there's a huge percentage of them are prescribed antidepressant things, which I thought was something that was like, obviously it's difficult because these people don't seem depressed, but the number of people who I know who are on them, and I think that stems from them being handed out too easily, if you know what I mean.
Well, I don't know, but presumably those people have all got a diagnosis of depression.
Well, I don't know. It's just.
Well, you're not going to give antidepressants to someone who hasn't got a diagnosis.
Well, you'd hope not.
Is it just because, we've said this before on occasions, is it just because we're getting better at working out what depression is and mental illness and anything like that? Mm-hmm. Is it just because it's now at the forefront of the GP's minds?
All I mean is the issue to me. If too many people are on antidepressants, then the problem isn't the antidepressant drug. The problem is, why are people being wrongly diagnosed with depression?
if they're wrongly diagnosed.
Yeah.
Well,
Or is it just because
if too many antidepressants are being prescribed, then by definition, too many people are being misdiagnosed with depression because you can't get the drugs without it.
there's too many depressed people around.
Yeah, I mean the cause may be that our lifestyle, the way that our lifestyle is going, and the way that the pressure of life is going, is making more people depressed.
Yeah,
and therefore they're having more diagnosis of depression.
Well, there's quite a good argument around this. There's a book about happiness and basically how it's a misguided endeavor by society, because if you get more choice, or more to do with choice than happiness per se, but basically you'll see in societies or subsectors of society, you see it in the rich and famous and this sort of thing. If you've got a lot of choices, that depression in those groups is very, very high. So it may be a misguided endeavor to create a situation where people have a lot of choice and a lot of free time, because that seems to lead to more depression.
I can see how that would work. Actually, it's like if you had limited resources and a small amount of things to do, it would be easier to sort of cope, if you know what I mean. Whereas if you got not unlimited resources, but if you got lots of different things to do, you'll sort of like be striving to do things better all of the time.
Well, places where people are dying of disease and famine and blah blah blah, suicide virtually doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So it's not advocating, okay, let's roll it back so we're back in that state. Obviously, that would be worse. But there's obviously a balance to be found, isn't there?
Yeah, that's the thing, is the balance, isn't it?
So your friends who you're saying are they have, well, we say they have depression because they're being treated for it. They're all around your age, are they? So mid-30s?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
I like you think I'm mid-30s. Thanks, John.
Oh no, God, you must be nearly 40, are you?
Don't ruin it. Don't ruin it. 39 this year.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I suppose I am 44 this year, so yeah, that would. Yeah, I don't know. For some reason, I've known you both for so long. I just assume that you stay where you are in age. But well, actually, Richard does, because Richard does seem to be going backwards in time.
But yeah, I mean, like I say, from my point of view, it's purely on it's not because of any particular evidence. I don't know who's been diagnosed with. Well, obviously, like Richard said, they must have been diagnosed with it. But it was just, I mean, to be honest, it was something I think it would have been probably about 10 years ago I noticed it, when I just happened to find out how many people were on the same, I don't know what drug it was, but on the same drug.
I mean, that will definitely correlate with the population. Well, maybe not that percentage of the population, but it definitely is on the rise. But you've always got to be careful of these things. That cancer. I've said this before. Cancer's on the rise as a product of the fact that other things aren't killing people. So dying in their teens of tuberculosis, they're getting into their 60s and 70s and getting cancer and dying of that. Now, so it's just a consequence of other things being removed. And I think maybe at a social, a sort of social level and a psychological level, as you remove barriers, make people's lives better, the human condition is going to be to not find something to be depressed about, but you know what I mean. You've evolved in a situation where you're wired to solve problems and basically be in a survivalist type situation all the time. I mean, this is just my own thoughts on it. It's not really, I don't know what the science is, if there's been any science done, but you would think that that's part of it, is the human condition is a state that we're no longer in. So there's something about that where as soon as you take people out of a survivalist state, they become, they're more prone to depression. That seems to be true.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I mean, all these people who you have said they're being treated for depression, do they all live where you live, around there? Would they by any chance have the same GP?
In the middle of nowhere where it's really depressing?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to say.
Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just saying.
There's nothing to do around here.
The chance is that they'll have the same GP.
Possibly, yeah.
And
yeah.
Is he presupposed to give out, antidepressants? I don't know.
It's entirely possible. I mean, by the same thing, it could just be that I just happened to have, found out on a few people, and it wasn't, as many as I thought. I don't know, but
well, the thing as well about antidepressants is they don't treat depression, which a lot
Yeah.
of people seem to not understand that. They're not a treat. They're not the treatment for a depression.
They just suppress it, don't they?
Yeah, they just help you not commit suicide while you get your act together, basically, or take the worst of it off, take the worst of the edge off
The
it.
edge.
Yeah, it's not gonna, you need to see a
Well, that's the thing,
psychologist or do something with your life to get.
Yeah, it's a psychological thing, so it can't cure it, can it?
It can be alleviated, basically,
Yeah.
but if you rely on the drug to cure you, you're going to be on the drug for life, effectively.
Yeah.
But actually, there's a story in the press in the last 2 weeks. Antidepressants have been found to double the risk of suicide and aggression in young people.
What? Antidepressants double the risk of suicide?
Yeah.
Well, I guess
That's a bit of a failure, isn't it?
not generically though, not in
It's
a
gonna-
certain group.
With young people, so it's probably going to be something along the lines of the most popular effective antidepressants. The thing about antidepressants, all of them say on them that your risk of suicide is increased, because that's scientifically the case. Because they're not going to stabilize you, because they're going to do something to change your mental state here. It's going to destabilize your mental state as a whole. So it's going to give you a net good, but the suicide rate for the group of people who are on them goes up. So, but doubles
interesting.
very high.
If
It
those
is,
people
yeah.
are taking antidepressants, would they not already had a high level of suicide rate anyway?
Yeah. So it's
If
double
they
the
weren't
rate. Obviously,
taking them?
it'll be double the base rate. So, yeah. So yeah, if the base rate's 1 in 20 people with depression, it'll probably not be as high as that, but 1 in 50 people with depression, then it's double that 50. Yeah. It becomes 1 in 25.
Interesting.
I did
we
not
still
know that.
We still have a viewer who is watching the program, and is
I know who the viewer is.
who is it?
It's Andrea.
Is it Andrea? Hello, Andrea. Come on, just type something. You were doing all this insightful. You see, for the people who are watching, obviously we know who's watching now, but for the people who's watching in the future or listening to the podcast, the four of us were out. We were very rarely did we get to see everybody in actual physical form, rather than just a little postage stamp that I'm seeing in the corner of the screen now. But we were all out on Friday night, and we had lots of philosophical conversations and things that I periscoped some of it. So when I've watched that back, and that's that didn't work very well as an experiment. But I'm sure it would be if I sat with a tripod up, but the fact that I was just moving it around. But Andrea, who is watching this live, she actually works for Newcastle University, and she's got lots of stuff that we could use, and she's been feeding it through today, like what's happening in the university, what's happening in the research departments. But you can type and join in the conversation. In fact, we positively encourage it. No.
No, nothing.
We should probably say some positive things about drugs as well, just for balance. There's two stories in the press at the moment as well, that guinea worm is a human disease which is now very, very close to being completely eradicated by obviously medical science, medical intervention. So that's now going to be the second disease after smallpox to be completely eradicated. It's got a milestone moment, isn't it?
Guinea worm.
Guinea worm, yeah, it's a huge. Well, it's not at the moment because it's whittled it right down, but it was it's been a big killer in Africa, so it's a bit of a horrendous one to get as well.
So, and I think other things as well. Obviously you said smallpox there. Diphtheria, that's almost eradicated.
Yeah.
Whooping cough. When people take the measles vaccine, they.
Whooping cough's had a little bit of a resurgence, hasn't it, because of anti-vaxxers?
Yeah, and but also people who are a few years ago there was that that scare where they thought it was changing the children's sort of mental state after they had the vaccines, so they've stopped doing that, and of course everything's risen again, measles.
Yeah.
And but yeah, measles. People forget about things like tetanus and stuff.
Yeah.
But because it's just such a non-thing now.
Well, even HIV is in the press at the moment because of the early trials. Sorry, trials that have been going on a long time are showing early promise in actually treating HIV, which would be incredible. Because of course that's a huge killer still. I'm saying
Yeah,
still, it seems to get
and
worse.
it's.
Yeah, that doesn't it?
I think the thing. Well, I think it plateaued out, and it was actually falling for a bit.
Was it right?
Yeah. Obviously, when it was rampant in the early '80s, and then uh, as more and more people got to know about it because of all the government campaigns, and whatever you said about the government campaign, it was a horrifically stark campaign that they had in the '80s, but it did shock people, and it did seem to work.
Yeah.
And things started, and obviously with research, and they were getting combinational drug therapy, it did start to plateau and fall. But as I don't know whether people are getting more just blasé about it now, and it's started to rise again.
All right.
But I don't think it's starting to rise in the old core groups of homosexuals and drug users. Well, it may be in drug users, certainly not in homosexuals. Homosexuals are quite aware of it. You know, it's the proliferation in the heterosexual community now.
Right.
They just don't seem to be using, condoms and the like. So that's really really depressing actually, because it's the fact that the combinational therapy was starting to work really well, and the fact is that the prognosis for people who are on a combination therapy is really quite good now.
Well, it doesn't affect your life expectancy now, basically, does it? It's more or
I
less.
think it's statistically negligible. If you but you have to keep up the treatment, and you have to continue with it.
Well, yeah, and when they say these things, I bet it's not quite as good as that. You know what I mean? If you've had something that's affected your immune system, presumably you're at risk of all kind of outlying risks that maybe aren't built into the statistics that you could fall foul of. That, like, you know what I mean? That they never connect to the disease, but you would never know, would you?
No, it's
If
true.
you catch something else, you would never know it was because you had HIV or not.
But yeah. So there's obviously a lot of good things that we're down, and I don't think anybody can be down on medicine, because that would be silly, because it's the fact that our the age that we are living to now is increased. Apart from the fact that our sanitary conditions are much better, and the food that we eat is much better generally. Apart from things that you pour water on and just rehydrate and stuff.
I think the only thing that we have a genuine problem with, like I say, I think the depression thing is more of a one where we need to fix the root cause rather than the drugs. I don't think the drugs is necessarily the problem. I think this thing in the US about opiates looks to be a huge issue. So I think that is probably the only modern one. I think on the whole, the war on drugs thing has been an absolute disaster, and trying to legislate just simply hasn't worked.
I think the opiates thing, and I'll say again what I said the last time was perhaps, and I don't know, and I didn't check this out afterwards, but I remember saying that perhaps it's because of the state medical situation in America, where
Possibly,
you
yeah.
don't have to pay for it, so people do self-medicate. I still think that's a reasonable assumption.
It could be, but then they've still got, like you say, if they've got a blasé attitude towards taking them, though, has become a secondary problem, then, hasn't it?
Yes.
The fact that people are willing to risk their lives in that way without, well, it's probably just a misunderstanding of the risk.
True enough. And amazingly, we've hit the time again, and this time we've answered the questions. It's brilliant. So we've done 45 minutes on medicines and drugs and self-medication and reliance on drugs. But we'd like to throw it open to you now, and obviously Andrea's viewing, and there might be other people viewing when it goes on archive. But we want your opinion on it, and we want you to ask us questions and contradict some of the things we said. We're quite happy to be shot down as being inaccurate. these are just our views on what we talk about for the 45 minutes when the Wondrous stuff is on. So, has anybody else got anything to say on the topic of this evening?
I was going to say, just while you were talking about life expectancy, just come across a story here about this drug that they think will prevent, it says prevent aging, but obviously extend life, and they're extending life of animals by 35% apparently.
Is it what? This is a veterinarian drug, or is this
Yeah.
the fact that they're testing on animals? And
They're testing. Well, actually, no. They're testing on cells, and they're going to test it on animals.
Yeah, I saw that. It sounds. Maybe we should do that as our topic next week, is life extension, because it's something that I'm really interested in as well. If you want to go for that, or not next week, the week after.
2 weeks time. Actually, we'll have to have a discussion off air about that because I'm on holiday.
Oh.
I'm in Morocco, so we'll.
Do it from Morocco.
Do it from Morocco, yeah, that'd be great.
Morocco. Yeah, I've heard that the Wi-Fi in the hotel is patchy, and I'm not doing it on 4G connection. Well, I don't even if they have a 4G connection. So we'll discuss that. But I'm sure there will be one next in 2 weeks' time. But what I'll do is I'll finish up now and say obviously as I normally do. I haven't got my little thing on the screen. Let me just twiddle that back. There you go. So it's the Wondrous stuff. We have our little. I think I'm the only one who has this now. But
Yeah,
my Twitter handle has been on screen, and nobody else's is working anymore. And we have an email address which is wondrousstuff@gmail.com. We all have access to the inbox, and we can all see any responses. And please ask us questions and tell us that we're rubbish. All good. We have a domain name of wondrousstuff. Oh no, that's the old one. That's the new one. Wondrousstuff.com is our website where we post everything that's all of the blog stuff. There's a link to the podcast version of this, which you can listen to on your phone, Walkman-y, iPhone-y player thingy at work, or you can listen to it on the website while you do your dilly chores. And that's about it basically. So if you liked it, tell us, give us some feedback. If you didn't, give us some feedback anyway. And 2 weeks time, the next one, episode 58 of the Wondrous Stuff, we'll be back, and we've all enjoyed it. So say bye bye everybody.
Bye bye.
Goodbye.